When you visit Unity of Houston, you'll find a spiritual community, a church where you can connect and learn and grow with a progressive approach to Christianity. At Unity, we welcome you no matter what your beliefs. You'll find a teaching, loving, inspiring experience as we help each other be all we're created to be. Check us out. We'd love to have you. Find us online at unityhouston.org, and remember, life is meant to be good.
From Unity of Houston, Texas, this is the Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational spiritual community providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress now with Reverend Howard Caesar.
There was a fellow who was praying to God, and his prayer went sort of like this. So far today, God, I've done all right. I haven't gossiped, I haven't lost my temper, I haven't been grumpy, I haven't been nasty or selfish. I'm really glad and grateful. But in a few minutes, God, I'm going to get out of bed. And from then on, I really need your help. So, point is, we all need help at various times in our lives, don't we? I've received lots of help in my life. I'm so grateful for it. We all go through various experiences and things. We face challenges and face obstacles and problems and goals and things to conquer and what have you. And we've all been helped, really, in various ways along the journey of our life at various times. We need each other. And we ourselves have hopefully had many instances where we've helped another. And so we teach that we're really all one. It is about unity. It is about oneness. Humanity is a family, and it's really understanding that. We harp on that a lot, that we're really all brothers and sisters. We're all children of the one same God. No matter what your doctrine, your dogma, or set of beliefs, there's one creator. And the truth is, nothing separates us except ideas and beliefs and ideologies. Truth is, below it all, there is love and oneness. And so not everyone understands that, obviously, and not everyone lives from that. Many do, and many are seeking to, but it's something that we're all called to. That's a part of our journey in life, is to be called to this. Basically, in all of my studies, through all of my years of ministry and prior to, and all of my research and readings and studies of masters and mystics and teachers, including Jesus Christ, of course, all the different universal paths and teachings of all the deep teachers that have ever graced this planet, they all seem to say essentially the same thing in terms of there being essentially two things that are most important that you learn in your journey on earth. Two things, they all say. And that is that you learn to love and you learn to serve. Those two things, over and over again. And if they have to narrow it down to what is most important, it is always to love and to serve. And so we know that that was certainly Jesus' message as well. And when asked what was the greatest commandment, he said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And to love your neighbor as yourself was second, of course. And who is our neighbor but everyone, humanity. And how do we show love and put love in motion? Through service. Through service. And so one of the ways that we're able to demonstrate then our love for God, that being the first and foremost commandment, one of the ways that we show our love for God is in finding some way to be in service to God, where we feel like we're actually helping God and contributing to God. And another thing that we need to look at, if the second part of that is to love your neighbor, then we are to be looking for some ways in which we feel that we are really helping and being of service to our neighbors, our humanity, those who we encounter, wherever we encounter them. So Jesus was very clear that when we are in loving service or helping another, we are basically helping the whole of humanity. You're not just helping that one person, it's somehow bigger than that. And that we're helping God, we're helping Jesus Christ, we're helping ourselves, we're helping the whole, because we're all brethren. And Jesus spoke of himself as my brethren, meaning that he is our brother, all right? we're of his family. And there's a passage that is found in Matthew 25 where he makes the point that being of service and helping others actually distinguishes a person or kind of sets them apart from individuals whose lives are tied up with the focus only being on themselves. And some of us start out there, we do, where it's all about, what can we do for ourselves? And then we graduate and mature spiritually in other ways to seeing that life is bigger than that. But along these lines, Jesus gives an analogy in Matthew 25, and he said it is sort of like separating the sheep from the goats. And people have interpreted this in various ways, but he says, sharing kind of a story, an analogy, a metaphor, he says, "Then the king will say to those on his right hand," meaning the righteous, meaning the sheep, meaning those who are of service, "Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." And the righteous sheep, the serving, will say, "When did we see you hungry and feed you? When did we see you thirsty and give you drink? And when did we do all these things?" And the king will answer and say, "Inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. You did it to me." And that's saying, essentially, that when you help another, you are actually helping God, you are helping Jesus Christ, you are in service to the whole. We're all connected, we're all one. And it's for us to really understand that and grasp that, because all the masters, mystics, and teachers, and Jesus here, once again, love and service is the key. It's paramount, so important. There are many things that Jesus actually said along these lines of love and service and being in sacred service. And really, what is it that makes service sacred? It's basically that there is love inside of it. There's love inside of what it is that you're doing. The ego is kind of laid aside. And it's sacred because you are coming from the place where you actually hold all of life as being sacred. You hold humanity as sacred, all creation as sacred. And certainly even from the least of these to the greatest. Not just the greatest, but there's no measurement, there's no comparing, there's no judging. You will hold all as sacred. And that's called sacred service. And Jesus said, whoever desires to become great among you shall be your servant. Whoever would wish to become great among you will be your servant. For even the Son of Man didn't come to be served, Even he was saying, I didn't come to be served, I came to serve. That's what it's about. I came to love and show you that love is what it's about. In Matthew 9, he said it similar, but in a little bit different way. Different gospels it was said. He said it this way, he said, "But he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. And whoever exalts himself shall be humbled. And whoever humbles himself will be exalted." Sometimes we have to humble ourselves in service. I know a lot of people that have been humbled in sacred ways, in being of service. Might be to their parents, might be to their children, might be to their neighbor, might be to a stranger, but they humbled themselves. And the point is that we can't always put ourselves first, that there is some sacrifice actually in life called for us, some dismantling of the ego tendency to be always in self-importance. And once a person begins to understand where that's called for in various moments where one must humble oneself, then me becomes we, and mine becomes ours. Now, sometimes people really confuse happiness and pleasure. Happiness and pleasure. And there's nothing wrong with pleasure, to be in our lives, be it food or travel or relaxation, entertainment, leisure, other things that are of pleasure. Nothing wrong with that. But many have searched for happiness in the pleasure. More and more pleasure, seeking it, and they come up void, empty and unfulfilled. Because basically they haven't realized where happiness lies. And the simplistic distinction between the two is that pleasure is basically when you help or serve yourself. The focus is on helping and serving yourself, looking for pleasure. It's okay, but it needs to be balanced because with happiness, which is when you help and serve others. Happiness is found in helping others. It really is. Because we're all one. And when I help you, I help myself. And I get a jolt of something that is sometimes even hard to measure or comprehend. Happiness depends on how happy others can be because of us. How much we can contribute to another's happiness. Lighten their load, whatever. And so it's important. Happiness depends on how much we can help each other and bring happiness to each other. You know, there's a study that was done in which there were two groups of people, 30 people put in two separate rooms. And so there were 30 people in this room, 30 people in this room. And what they did was each one of them was given a balloon. And on the balloon had their name. Okay, and so it was their own unique balloon. And so what they did was then they jumbled the balloons all around the room. You didn't know where your name or your balloon was. And then they were told, okay, you're going to be put on the clock and see how quickly everyone can get their balloon with their name back in their hands, in their possession. And so the first group in this one room went, and they worked a long time. And they struggled, they stumbled over each other, they fumbled with it. Some of them got irritated, some got competitive, scrambling, looking, getting frantic and getting frustrated. Finally, after some period of time, they all had a balloon, but they weren't happy about it. In the other room, they were the same thing, jumbled the balloons. They didn't know where their balloon with their name on it was. They were to get it back in their possession somehow or another, put on the clock. And it happened very quickly in the other room. And everyone was polite and happy and pleasant. And it was a good experience. And what happened was each person grabbed the balloon. Didn't matter what the name was. And they called out the person's name. And so they'd hear their name, and so they would seek each other out. And it was an up energy because everyone felt like they helped somebody get their balloon. And everybody felt like somebody helped them get their balloon. It was a very positive outcome. And that's what life is. That's happiness. Jesus, in Mark 9, it says, Jesus sat down and he called the 12 disciples around him, like, this is important, listen up. And he told them, now listen, if anyone here desires to be first, he shall be last of all and servant of all. It's not about making yourself first. It's about being servant of all, putting others ahead. Now, I know there are unhealthy ways or people that go to extremes where they put themselves last. We're not talking about that person, okay? Let me give you an example of the idea of serving the smallest and the least, among those that we may encounter, giving help. And this is kind of a children's story, or you might think of it as that. So go to your child, and it's a barnyard story. It's about animals, okay? So I'm just kind of warning you. And anyway, it's about a mouse. And there's all little stories. This has a moral to it. And this little mouse looked through a crack in the wall to see that the farmer and his wife had just received a package. And the mouse wondered, what's in that package? Maybe there's some food in there, and it might contain. So the mouse is watching and ends up being devastated to find that when they opened the package, it was a mouse trap. And so he ran into the farmyard and proclaimed, there's a mouse trap in the house. There's a mouse trap in the house. And the chicken that he first encountered clucked and scratched a bit, raised raised its head and said, "My little mouse, I can tell this is of grave concern to you, but it is of no consequence to me. I can't be bothered with this." And so then the mouse turned to the pig and yelled, "There's a mouse trap in the house! There's a mouse trap in the house!" And the pig sympathized and said, "I'm so sorry, mouse, but there's nothing I can do. I will hold a good thought." Then the mouse turned to the cow and said, "There's a mouse trap in the house. There's a mouse trap in the house." And the cow said, "Wow, Mr. Mouse, I can see your concern. I'm worried for you, but it's of no consequence to me." So then the mouse returned to the house, head down, dejected, having to face the farmer's mousetrap problem alone. The very next night, there was a sound that was heard throughout that house, the farmhouse, like the sound of a mousetrap catching its prey. The farmer's wife rushed to see what was caught. It was in the dark. She didn't see that it was a venomous snake whose tail had got caught in the trap. The snake bit the farmer's wife. The farmer rushed his wife to the hospital. She returned home with a fever. Everyone knows that you treat a fever with fresh chicken soup. You're ahead of me. So the farmer went to the farmyard for the soup as its main ingredient. Well, the wife's problem of sickness continued, so friends and neighbors came to sit with her day and night, and to feed them, the farmer had to butcher the pig. And it was really sad. The farmer's wife did not get well. She passed on. So they had a funeral, and after the funeral, they had everyone to the house. And the farmer had to butcher the cow in order to feed all the people who came to the house. And at the funeral, the mouse, oh, no moose got butchered. The mouse looked out upon it all from the crack in the wall and just looked with sadness. And so whether you like the story or not, it might have been a little too violent for some of you, I know, but the point of the story and the moral is we're all really tied together. And it's like ripples on a pond, you know. We all live in the same barnyard, folks. We really do. And it's called Earth. And when we help another, we're really helping ourselves. It's good karma. There is the law, as you sow, so shall you reap, and that applies also to being of sacred service and helping each other. Jesus said, "Give and it will be given unto you." It's basically what I call the boomerang principle. Whatever you dish out comes back to you. Let me tell you one more story. This is not a barnyard story. This is a lovely story. It's a story about a guy named Brian Anderson. And Brian was driving along kind of a back road outside of a small town, and he encountered an elderly lady that was on the side of the road, apparently having problems of some kind. Saw that she needed help, so he pulled over and stopped his kind of beat-up Pontiac, parked a little ways from it, and went over to help this lady who was driving a Mercedes. And he smiled as he approached her, and she looked a bit worried. She had been there a fairly long time. A lot of people had driven by, hadn't stopped, and this guy, Brian, didn't look that safe. His appearance was kind of poor and shabby, not well-to-do, and he could tell that she was a little bit frightened, so in trying to calm her down a bit, as he approached, he smiled at her and said, I'm here to help you. My name is Brian Anderson. And so she had a flat tire, and he crawled under there, got the jack under there, and did everything that you do to change a tire. And he got dirty a bit, and he actually cut his hand a little bit, nothing serious, but hurt himself a little bit. And when the job was done, she asked how much she owed him for the help that he had been to her. And Brian just looked at her, smiled, and said, if you really want to pay me back, the next time you see someone who needs help, give that person the needed assistance and think of me. And so the lady continued on, and it was toward the end of the day, so headed into this little town and stopped at a small cafe there. And the place looked a little bit dingy, but she went in, she sat down, and there was a waitress that approached her. And the waitress, as she approached her, wiped her brow from the sweat with a towel that she had. And the lady was 8 months pregnant, and she came up and had this sweetest, kindest, genuine smile and friendliness and warmth for this elderly lady. And the lady wondered, how someone who had so little, it seemed, was working so hard, was probably on her feet all day long, 8 months pregnant, how she was able to muster up that kind of genuine warmth and friendliness. And then she remembered Brian Anderson. And so she ate her meal, and after finishing the meal, she put $100 down on the counter, and the waitress went and took the $100 to get change. When the waitress came back, the elderly lady was gone. But there was a note that she had left on the napkin. And on the napkin, she had written, "You don't owe me anything. Somebody once helped me, just like now I'm helping you. And if you really want to pay me back, don't let this chain of love end with you." And under the napkin, there was another $400 bills. And that night, it wasn't long till she got off of work and she went home. She was thinking about this lady and the money that she had left, and wondering how this lady could have known how much she and her husband needed that they were struggling a bit. Her husband wasn't doing all that great in his work. And she said, especially now, with a baby on the way, so near. And so she knew that her husband had been worried about finances and what they were going to do, and she was glad to let him know the good news. So she walked into their place and leaned down and kissed him and whispered reassuringly, "Honey, now everything will be all right. I love you, Brian Anderson." Yeah. Didn't take long for the boomerang to return. The man that had fixed the car was her husband. And as Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "It is one of the most beautiful compensations of life that no man can sincerely try to help another without helping himself." And why is that? Because we're all one, aren't we? We're all connected. When I help you, I help myself. And when I help you go higher, I go higher. As Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I draw all men unto me. Well, if I help lift you up, I help lift myself up. It's just the way it is. It's a jolt of happiness. Sometime back, I came across some writings by an author named James Blanchard Cisneros, and he had written a book, and the book is called "You Have Chosen to Remember / A Journey from Perception to Knowledge, Peace of Mind and Joy." But I love that. You have chosen to remember, and all of us have chosen to remember who we are in various moments so that we can be that. We often forget who we are and aren't that, but that's part of our journey, is remembering. And so you have chosen to remember, a journey from perception to knowledge, peace of mind and joy. And this man had a deep mystical experience, and he wrote about it, and it had to do with the difference that we can make in small moments. And in this mystical experience, he was led through an individual interaction, or an interaction with an individual, where he offered some love and peace to someone. And that was part of the dynamic. And he said that his offering of love and peace felt like it lasted just a moment in time, and yet it seemed to flow forever out into eternity. Okay, so you get the gist of this? And here's what he wrote about that dynamic. He said, "I was shown how, in this deep mystical experience, I was shown how one individual interaction touched not only the person with whom I interacted, but flowed to those with whom they interacted, and they interacted with, and so on. I wondered how many people my one interaction affected, and in that one moment I was brought into a stadium full of people, and I was in awe at the number of people that single interaction touched, and I had to hold back my tears. And then an angel smiled at me and said, 'No, not yet.' and lifted me above the stadium. And there I saw what seemed to be 1,000 more stadiums, filled with those my one interaction had in one way or another touched. And I could no longer hold back my tears. And before this vision or experience, I believed that the only way I could make a difference in the world was by leading or serving a great number of people. But it was there that I learned about the magnificence of the moment, the importance of even the shortest conversation, the beauty of a kind glance, the value of a caring smile, the substance of a gentle touch, the magnitude of an honest compliment, the magnificence of a warm hug. Quite an experience that man had that gives way to the idea that takes us beyond the limited human perspective of really how far our loving actions and being of service go. It ripples on out into the universe. It has an impact of which we know not or don't even realize. The Apostle Paul in 1 Peter said, "As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace." And in Galatians, Apostle Paul said, "And let us not grow weary while doing good. For in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those who are of the household of faith." Today, we are honoring those in the household of faith in this ministry. But we honor all people, wherever it is you may serve, in a sacred way. And really, again, to serve and be in of sacred services with the realization that it is an expression of love. And it's an expression of the love you have for life, the love you have for God as creator, the love you have for all of creation that surrounds you, brothers and sisters, least to the greatest. It's called sacred service. Let us be about it. You are all sacred. God bless you all.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. Unity is inclusive, welcoming people of all walks of life in dignity and love. We believe that love, strength, and goodness dwells within you. May we all live in unity with God, humanity, and all of God's creation. And remember, as Reverend Caesar says, life is meant to be good.
When you visit Unity of Houston, you'll find a spiritual community, a church where you can connect and learn and grow with a progressive approach to Christianity. At Unity, we welcome you no matter what your beliefs. You'll find a teaching, loving, inspiring experience as we help each other be all we're created to be. Check us out. We'd love to have you. Find us online at unityhouston.org, and remember, life is meant to be good.